Have you ever watched someone walk into a room and immediately command attention without uttering a single word? They don't plead, they don't explain, they don't chase validation, they simply exist. And suddenly, the entire atmosphere bends around them. Now imagine possessing that same power. Imagine what would happen if you stopped reacting to every provocation, every manipulation, every emotional ambush designed to pull you out of your center. What if, instead of engaging, you chose something far more threatening? Complete withdrawal. I'll tell you exactly what would happen. Chaos, panic, desperation. Because the people who have been controlling you through your reactions, through your predictable emotional patterns, through your relentless availability, they would suddenly realize they've lost their grip. And the moment you become unavailable, the game changes entirely. Those who thought they knew you, those who thought they could push your buttons whenever convenient, will discover they know absolutely nothing about the person you're becoming. Carl Jung understood this when he said, "Everything that irritates us about others can lead us to a better understanding of ourselves." But let me take this further. When you become genuinely inaccessible, watch who gets desperate, watch who becomes irritated, watch who frantically tries to provoke you back into your old patterns. This reveals everything. Not about you, but about them. It exposes exactly how much you've been manipulated without even realizing it. You've been giving yourself away, pleasing, smoothing things over, keeping the peace with people who were never truly on your side. And with every forced yes, every immediate response, every emotional reaction you couldn't control, you hemorrhaged pieces of your vital energy. And now you're exhausted, frustrated, hollow. You can't even explain why you feel so empty. But I can. You've been too available for people who don't deserve even a moment of your silence. This video isn't about becoming cold or turning your back on the world. It's about something Jung called individuation, the sacred process of becoming whole, authentic, and complete. And this process begins the moment you understand that silence can shatter 1,000 arguments. That withdrawal, when it comes from awareness rather than fear, is the ultimate act of power. So let me ask you directly, how much longer will you allow yourself to be controlled by other people's emotions? How much longer will you react like a puppet every time someone pulls your strings? Maybe it's time to cut those strings, to withdraw, to become a mystery. Because when you stop being available, everything changes. But first, you need to understand exactly how this prison was built. You apologize for taking up space in conversations. You check your phone 47 times, waiting for their response. You rehearse explanations in your head for decisions you don't owe anyone an accounting of. You say, "I'm sorry," when someone else bumps into you. These aren't random behaviors. They're symptoms. You've been programmed since childhood to believe your worth is measured by how accessible you are to others. Be present. Respond quickly. Please everyone. Say yes even when every cell in your body screams no. But here's the truth nobody wants you to hear. This excessive availability isn't a virtue, it's a prison. And as long as you believe you must be emotionally accessible at all times, you will be manipulated, drained, and discarded the moment you're no longer useful. Want to know why? Because being always available makes you predictable, and everything predictable becomes a tool. People begin using you as their emotional emergency button, pressing it whenever they need attention, relief, or validation. Then they put you back on the shelf until the next crisis. You know exactly who I'm talking about. The friend who only texts at 2 a.m. with problems they could have handled at 2 p.m. The partner who ignores you for days, then expects you to drop everything when they need something. The family member who drains your energy, then accuses you of not caring enough when you finally set a boundary. But you don't see this manipulation. You're trapped in the illusion that being present for everyone will somehow make someone be present for you. It doesn't work that way. Carl Jung spoke about the persona, this mask we wear to be accepted, loved, recognized, and it's precisely this mask that keeps you pathologically available. You say it's okay when you're suffocating. You respond to messages immediately even when you're depleted. You explain, justify, defend yourself as if you owe the world an accounting of your existence. But here's what's really happening. The more you place yourself at the center of everyone else's stage, the more you vanish from your own life. Being available all the time is a subtle form of self-abandonment. It's a disguised way of seeking approval, avoiding rejection, trying to control how others perceive you. But this control comes at a devastating price. Your peace, your vital energy distributed as if it were infinite when it's actually frighteningly limited. People who demand your constant availability don't actually want you. They want what you provide: validation, company, distraction, emotional comfort. But the moment you establish a boundary, the moment you refuse to react on command, those same people become hostile. They accuse you of changing, of being difficult, of being selfish. And here's what they really mean when they say, "You've changed. You've stopped letting me use you." It's not because you've changed. It's because you've stopped being functional for them. And here's the cruelest truth. The more available you are, the less value others assign to you. What's too abundant becomes worthless. No one respects what they don't have to earn. No one values what's always there, waiting, desperate to please. The less you need people, the more they need you. The more you withdraw your energy, the more power you reclaim. This is the paradox nobody teaches you. So stop right now and ask yourself, who truly deserves your time, your attention, your presence, your emotional energy, or better yet, who deserves your absence? But before you can answer that, we need to understand something fundamental. Why do we react so automatically? Why do we surrender so easily? And here's what you don't want to hear. Part of you enjoys being needed. Part of you gets a hit of validation from being the savior, the available one, the understanding friend. You've built your identity around it. So when I tell you to withdraw, you're not just losing people, you're losing the story you've told yourself about who you are. But that story is killing you. The answer to why lies in what Carl Jung called psychic energy, and understanding this will change everything. Because your energy is all you have, and if you don't learn to protect it, someone will weaponize it against you. If this content is resonating with you, subscribe to the channel. Your support means everything. Carl Jung didn't view the human psyche as some automatic machine that reacts to stimuli without consequences. For him, our mind operates like an energy system, and every thought, every emotion, every action consumes a portion of that finite energy. The question is, are you consciously choosing where your energy flows, or are you letting the world decide for you? Every time you react impulsively, you're hemorrhaging psychic energy. When you defend yourself against criticism that never deserved your attention, energy lost. When you respond to provocations just to prove you're right, energy lost. When you engage in pointless arguments, energy lost. When you exhaust yourself trying to please those who will never value you, energy lost. You're spending your inner strength on what does not nourish you. And Jung was brutally clear about this. That which you resist persists. The more you react, the more you bind yourself to the very things destroying you. People who live emotionally drained aren't weak. They're misdirected. Their energy flows to all the wrong places, feeding all the wrong people. And you know what happens to someone living in constant depletion? They become vulnerable, exposed, easy prey. Manipulative people, opportunists, emotional vampires, they can sense this. They notice you don't know how to guard your energy, that you react to everything, that you're always trying to fix the world. And they exploit it mercilessly. Let me show you how your energy is being drained right now, in ways you haven't noticed. You wake up already anxious about messages you might receive. You scroll through social media comparing your behind the scenes to everyone else's highlight reel. energy draining. You have a 10-second interaction that bothers you, then replay it in your mind for 10 hours. Energy hemorrhaging. Someone criticizes you and you can't sleep because you're mentally defending yourself to an audience that isn't even there. Energy annihilated. You're not living, you're reacting, and reaction without awareness is slavery. Jung said, "A healthy psyche is one that knows how to keep energy within the system." This means knowing how to say no without guilt, knowing how to remain silent without feeling cowardly, knowing how to observe before acting, because true power isn't in reacting, it's in choosing when and how to act. And this is only possible when you know yourself deeply enough to recognize your own impulses before they control you. When you can feel the surge of anger, the compulsion to defend, the need to explain, and pause, just pause. Let it pass through you like weather. How many nights have you lost sleep over an unresolved conversation? How many hours have you spent ruminating about what you should have said, trying to understand why someone treated you poorly? This is energy being drained with zero return. You're keeping alive ghosts that should have died long ago, feeding dynamics that only exist because you insist on responding. Psychic energy is like a force field. When properly guarded, it creates presence. You walk into a room and command respect without speaking. Your silence carries weight. Your occasional words land with impact because they're not diluted by constant noise. But when poorly managed, you become invisible, reactive, fragile, and the world has no mercy for those who surrender easily. So start observing your own triggers. What makes you react automatically? What makes you lose your center? These are the precise points where your energy escapes, and that's where you need to work. Not to become cold or indifferent, but to be selective, to be sovereign over yourself. Think of it this way. If your energy were money, you've been leaving your wallet open in crowded places, surprised when you end up broke. You've been handing out loans to people with no intention of paying you back. You've been investing in failing ventures while neglecting your own portfolio. Your anxiety isn't a weakness. It's your intuition screaming that you're in the wrong environment, giving your energy to the wrong people. And here comes one of Jung's most dangerous revelations. When you conserve your energy, when you stop reacting, when you withdraw into yourself, you shatter the projections others have placed upon you. And that disturbs people profoundly. Because now we're entering dark territory, the realm of silent manipulation, the specific archetypes who feed off your energy and why your unavailability completely disarms their games. Get ready to look into the eyes of those who have always drained you without you realizing it. You're about to see the faces you've been avoiding. You think you're in control. You believe your reactions are conscious choices, but the truth is darker. Most of your emotional responses are programmed, and those who understand this manipulate you effortlessly. Opportunistic people don't need to raise their voices, threaten, or create obvious drama. They simply trigger the buttons you've left exposed, and you react. Always. Carl Jung called this projection, the psychological mechanism through which people project onto others what they cannot see in themselves. But there's another side to this phenomenon that few notice. While others project onto you, you become the receptacle for these projections. The more emotionally available you are, the more you become a blank canvas for their distorted images. Let me introduce you to the archetypes who have been controlling you. The emotional vampire only reaches out during their crises. They text at 2 a.m. with emergencies they could have handled at 2 p.m. They drain your energy with their chaos, then disappear when you need support. But the moment you're unavailable, they accuse you of not caring, of abandoning them. Their manipulation works because they've trained you to react to their manufactured urgency. The intermittent reinforcer gives you just enough praise, just enough affection, just enough hope to keep you hooked. They're hot and cold, available then distant. They compliment you one day and criticize you the next. This inconsistency creates an addiction. You keep trying to earn the good version of them. Your energy pours into this slot machine that occasionally pays out, just enough to keep you playing. The projector accuses you of exactly what they're doing. They're the ones being distant, so they accuse you of pulling away. They're unreliable, so they question your commitment. They're manipulative, so they claim you're trying to control them. This projection keeps you defensive, constantly proving yourself, explaining your intentions, hemorrhaging energy into their distorted narrative. The guilt architect makes you feel responsible for their emotions. I'm only upset because you. If you really cared, you would, after everything I've done for you. They build elaborate structures of obligation, where your boundaries become your crimes and their demands become your duties. Your energy flows toward them through channels of guilt they've carefully constructed. That friend who only reaches out during their crises, that partner who always needs you to rescue them, that person who praises you but only when you're useful. None of this is coincidence. They're not relating to you. They're relating to the idea of you, to the role you've agreed to play. And why do you agree? Because you're terrified. Terrified of disappointing. Terrified of not being loved. Terrified of abandonment. The most effective manipulation doesn't happen through shouting. It happens in the silence of guilt. When you feel you owe something to others. When you believe you need to be available, need to help, need to understand, even when it's destroying you from within. And here's the central point. The manipulator doesn't need to control you directly. They just need you to keep reacting the same way. Your reaction is their power source, but when you stop reacting, the game shatters. When you start saying no, responding with silence, withdrawing instead of explaining yourself, the projections begin crumbling. The mask they forced onto you falls away, and this leaves people profoundly unsettled because they no longer know who you are. And worse, now they're forced to look at themselves. And not everyone is prepared for that confrontation. Your unavailability is a threat because it forces others to face their own emptiness. The silence you offer reveals the internal noise they've been running from. And then comes the attack, the criticism, the emotional drama, the accusations. You've changed. You're being cold. You're selfish now. You think you're better than everyone. Not because you're wrong, but because you stopped serving as their convenient mirror. Jung said, "We do not become enlightened by imagining figures of light, but by making the darkness conscious." When you withdraw, when you stop feeding the cycle, the other person's shadow begins emerging. And this is unbearable for those who have always used you as an escape from their own darkness. Think about Kierkegaard's concept of anxiety, the dizziness of freedom. When you finally choose yourself, when you exercise your freedom to withdraw your energy, you experience this dizziness. But so do the people around you. Because your freedom threatens their comfortable patterns, they experience the anxiety of suddenly having to be responsible for themselves. And Schopenhauer understood this when he spoke about the will. Your constant availability is surrendering your will to others. You've allowed their desires, their needs, their projections to override your own inner direction. Reclaiming your unavailability is reclaiming your will, the fundamental force of your being. But what about you? Are you ready to deal with the discomfort of being misunderstood, rejected, or even attacked for protecting yourself? Are you ready to endure the silence that comes after the rupture? Because it's precisely in that silence that a new kind of power is born. And that's what we're exploring next. Why silence can be the most devastating weapon of the human psyche, and how it completely transforms the dynamic between you and the world. But I need to warn you, what comes next will make you uncomfortable. Because we're about to discuss the one thing that terrifies people more than your anger, your complete absence. The modern world is deafening. Everyone wants to be heard, wants to respond instantly, wants to win meaningless debates and prove their point, even if it costs them their peace. But there's a power few understand and even fewer master: conscious silence. Not the silence of passivity or cowardice, but strategic, brutally lucid silence. the kind of silence that isn't absence, but amplified presence. Jung saw silence not as emptiness, but as fertile ground for inner transformation. When you stop reacting, you begin observing. And by observing, you see patterns that previously went unnoticed, emotional repetitions, manipulation games, cycles of self-sabotage. Silence allows for lucidity, and lucidity is dangerous for those who live to control you. Have you noticed how some people panic when you don't respond, when you don't explain yourself, when you simply disappear? It's not because they miss you. It's because your silence strips away their narrative control. While you're speaking, you're still in their game. While you're defending, explaining, justifying, you're still on their stage, playing by their rules, reacting to their provocations. But when you're silent, you change the rules entirely. And that unbalances anyone who thrives on your reaction. True silence isn't the absence of voice. It's mastery over your own energy. It's the refusal to be dragged into someone else's emotional chaos. It's the conscious choice not to engage in battles that aren't worth your soul. Silence is the weapon that controls without force. It's the power that influences without action. It's the presence that dominates without speaking. Think about it. When someone attacks you and you respond, you've entered their arena. They've successfully provoked you, controlled your emotional state, made you dance to their music. But when you remain silent, when you withdraw your energy completely, they're left swinging at shadows. Their provocations land on nothing. Their manipulation finds no purchase, and this drives them insane. Jung said that individuation, the process of becoming who you truly are, requires this distancing. Because only in silence can you hear yourself without the world's interference. Only in withdrawal can you distinguish between your authentic voice and the internalized demands of others. Dostoevsky understood this when he wrote about suffering and authentic being. Sometimes the most authentic thing you can do is suffer the misunderstanding, suffer the accusations, suffer the loneliness of being incomprehensible to those who only wanted to use you. But don't be fooled. Silence has a price. It will distance you from people who only valued you for the role you played. It will make you incomprehensible to those who only saw you through their own projections. It will make you seem cold, distant, even arrogant. The people who accuse you of being too sensitive are the same ones who benefited from your silence. They want you sensitive to their needs while remaining insensitive to your own. Your conscious silence disrupts this arrangement. But all of this is just a reaction from those who never wanted to deal with your depth, only with your utility. And here's the hard truth. The more you mature, the more selective you become with your words. Because you understand that each sentence is an energetic investment, and not everyone deserves access to your truth. Sometimes silence isn't retreat, it's sovereignty. It's the language of those who no longer need to prove anything to anyone. Silence is uncomfortable because it forces others to deal with their own thoughts, their own internal noise. And this discomfort reveals more about them than any argument of yours could ever reveal. You don't need to explain your absence. It explains itself, and those who feel threatened by it reveal exactly how much they depended on your imbalance to maintain their own control. When you're silent, people project onto that silence everything they fear about themselves. Your silence becomes a mirror, and they see their own manipulative tactics reflected back. They see their own emptiness, their own neediness, their own lack of substance, and they can't stand it. But the most powerful silence isn't the one that disturbs others. It's the silence that reconstructs you from within, the silence that connects you to something beyond external approval. It's in this internal space, free from others' demands, that you begin recovering your vital energy, reconnecting with your essence. You stop being a scattered response to 1,000 voices and become a unified presence guided by one voice, your own. Jung spoke about the self, that central organizing principle of the psyche. The self emerges not in the noise of constant reaction, but in the silence of deep introspection. When you withdraw from the collective noise, from the endless demands for your attention and energy, you create space for the self to emerge. This is individuation. This is becoming whole. And this is precisely what we're exploring next, because it's not enough to cut out external noise. You need to relearn how to use your energy consciously, to choose where it goes, where it stays, and most importantly, where it should never be wasted. Understanding all of this intellectually means nothing if in practice you continue saying yes when you mean no, responding to messages that drain you, participating in empty conversations, and maintaining relationships that only exist out of inertia. Awareness without action is just another form of self-deception. True transformation begins when you firmly decide to become selective, and this requires emotional discipline. Conscious unavailability isn't about being cold, arrogant, or indifferent. It's about no longer being accessible to anyone, at any time, for any reason. It's about taking control of your own energy, your own time, your own peace. And this starts with small, deliberate actions. Not responding immediately, breathing before reacting, leaving a discussion before being dragged into chaos, turning off your phone without guilt, saying not today, saying I'm not interested, saying I won't get involved. Let me be specific about what this looks like in practice. Someone sends you a long emotional text demanding an immediate response. Old you would drop everything to reply, managing their feelings, explaining yourself, proving your care. New you reads it when you have the emotional capacity, responds if you choose to, or doesn't respond at all. If the message itself was manipulation disguised as communication, someone tries to provoke you with criticism. Old you would defend, justify, explain, engage. New you observes the provocation, recognizes it for what it is, and refuses to give it your energy. Your silence in response to their attack is more powerful than any defense. Someone makes you feel guilty for having boundaries. Old you would apologize, shrink your boundaries, prove your devotion. New you understands that guilt is often the manipulator's last resort when other tactics fail. You feel the guilt and maintain the boundary anyway. This is conscious unavailability in action. But here's the most important part. You don't need to justify your absence. You don't need to explain your silence. You owe nothing to anyone but yourself. And this, for many people, is unforgivable. Because when you refuse to explain yourself, you strip away their power to keep you trapped in an emotional narrative where you're always the helpful, understanding, accessible one. You're allowed to protect yourself. You're allowed to disappoint people who've only valued your servitude. You're allowed to be the villain in someone else's story, if that's what it takes to be the hero in your own. Carl Jung understood that every process of individuation involves isolation. Not depressive isolation, but sacred isolation. A time of inner retreat where you relearn to listen to your own voice without the world's interference. Where you rebuild your identity not based on others' perceptions, but from your own center. This sacred isolation is where you stop performing and start becoming. Where you cease explaining and start embodying. Where you quit defending your worth and start living it. Want to know a reliable indicator of your evolution? Observe who starts distancing themselves when you become more reserved. Observe who tries to provoke you when you stop reacting. Observe who accuses you of changing when you finally start protecting yourself. These aren't signs you're doing something wrong. They're proof you've begun freeing yourself. The emotional vampire will accuse you of not caring when you refuse to be their 2 a.m. crisis hotline. The intermittent reinforcer will claim you're being difficult when you stop accepting their inconsistency. The projector will say you're the problem when you stop absorbing their projections. The guilt architect will paint you as selfish when you dismantle their guilt structures. Let them. Being unavailable is uncomfortable at first. You'll feel guilty. You'll think you're being selfish. You'll hear that you're being too harsh. But this is part of the deconstruction process. You've spent your entire life conditioned to put yourself second. It's natural that change causes discomfort, not only in you, but in everyone who benefited from your old version. Conscious unavailability is the foundation of self-determination. When you say no to the world, you're saying yes to yourself. When you withdraw from a toxic environment, you're reaffirming that your peace is worth more than any false connection. And when you stop explaining yourself, you begin being respected, even if only by a few. Becoming selfish is how you stop being used. This is the paradox. You become more loving by loving fewer people, by reserving your energy for those who deserve it, who reciprocate it, who honor it. But not everyone is ready for this type of presence. Your emotional absence will expose wounds they don't want to face. It will reveal how much they depended on your emotional chaos to feel in control. And it's at this moment that the rupture comes. And with the rupture comes the pain, the loneliness, the estrangement, the feeling that you're losing something, when in fact you're just freeing yourself. But what happens after that? What comes after the distancing? What is born from the silence? In this final part, we're exploring the rebirth that only happens when you have the courage to be misunderstood, to be alone, and to become whole on your own. It's time to understand why the solitude of the strong is the path to true freedom, and why most people will never reach it, because they can't endure the silence long enough to be transformed by it. When you stop being available to everyone, something profound begins happening. First comes the silence, an uncomfortable silence that seems to scream inside you. You wonder if you made the right choice, if you're being too harsh, if you're losing people who cared about you. This is the dizziness Kierkegaard spoke about, the vertigo of freedom when you finally exercise your will to choose yourself. But gradually, this silence transforms. It begins cleansing, calming, healing. And then comes solitude. But not the solitude of absence. It's the solitude of total presence, your own presence, the solitude of the strong, the solitude of one who no longer betrays themselves to keep others close. And in that space where there was once confusion, clarity enters. Where there was anxiety, peace enters. Where there was neediness, a new kind of strength enters, the strength of being whole within yourself. This is what Jung meant when he spoke about the self, that integrated, complete version of you that can only emerge when you stop fragmenting yourself across 1,000 different people's expectations. Carl Jung said the process of individuation, becoming who you really are, requires you to distance yourself from the collective, to disidentify from the mask, to walk alone for a while. And that's exactly what you're doing when you choose unavailability. You're not fleeing the world, you're returning to yourself. It's at this point that you stop being a reactor and become a creator. You cease being shaped by circumstances and begin shaping your reality from within. Your energy is no longer scattered to whoever demands it. It's concentrated, focused, directed by your own conscious will. Schopenhauer understood that the will is the fundamental force of existence. When you reclaim your unavailability, you reclaim your will from those who have been directing it toward their own ends. The people who feel uncomfortable with your absence reveal that they never wanted you. They wanted the role you played. And now that you no longer fit, they don't know what to do with you. And that is liberating. You'll lose people, but you'll find yourself. You'll distance yourself from places, but you'll reconnect with your essence. You'll become misunderstood, but finally, you'll begin being respected. Because when you're no longer available for anything, you become valuable, rare, unforgettable. People who can be bought with praise are common. People who react predictably to manipulation are everywhere. But someone who has mastered their own energy, who guards their peace like a sacred treasure, who offers their presence as a gift rather than a guarantee, that person is extraordinary. And don't be fooled. This is a rebirth, a new beginning. The start of a life where you're no longer available for emotional crumbs, for mind games, for voids disguised as affection. Dostoevsky wrote about the underground man, isolated and alienated. But there's a difference between his alienation and yours. His came from bitterness and resentment. Yours comes from self-respect and discernment. His isolation made him smaller. Yours makes you whole. Now you only accept what resonates with your peace, your truth, your wholeness. You accept relationships where your unavailability is respected, not resented, where your silence is understood, not weaponized against you, where your energy is reciprocated, not extracted. You accept work that honors your boundaries rather than expecting you to be available every hour of every day. You accept friendships that allow for seasons of withdrawal without taking it personally. You accept nothing less than what resonates with the person you've become. And if you've made it this far, it's because part of you is already ready for this new path. Part of you has already understood that being loved means nothing if you have to abandon yourself to receive it. And that true self-love begins when you choose yourself, even if it costs you being alone for a while. Most of you watching this will do nothing. You'll feel inspired for 48 hours, then slip back into people-pleasing, back into explaining yourself, back into energetic bankruptcy. Because the truth is, staying small is comfortable. Being misunderstood is terrifying. So you'll choose the familiar pain over the unfamiliar freedom. You'll go back to being available for people who don't deserve you. You'll go back to reacting to every provocation. You'll go back to hemorrhaging energy into relationships that drain you. And you'll wonder why you feel so empty, so exhausted, so lost. But for those few who are genuinely ready, who are so exhausted from giving themselves away that they'd rather risk loneliness than continue the performance, write, "I choose my peace" in the comments. Not as a promise to me, but as a contract with yourself. Not as a temporary feeling, but as a permanent commitment to becoming unavailable for anything that costs you your inner freedom. Let's see who's actually ready to become unavailable. Let's see who's willing to weaponize their silence, withdraw their energy, and reclaim their power. Now tell me in the comments, are you ready to be misunderstood, rejected, or even hated in the name of your inner freedom? Are you willing to pay the price of being you? If this message touched something deep within you, if it made sense, write in the comments, "I choose my peace." Let's see how many here are ready for this transition. How many are ready to stop being controlled by reactions and start being governed by conscious choice? And don't forget, keep watching the next video. It's important, much more than you imagine, because we're going deeper into the shadow, into the parts of yourself you've been avoiding, into the transformation that only happens when you stop running from your own darkness. See you there.